So we saw the Indian at the Moshe Beprotius, we saw the Moshe with the Maturgiman.
Rabbi Gafni, what day and what
Oh yes, yeah. So today is Tesvo of Elul, or El Tesayan Elul. Hemshech Ayin Beis, Chelik Aleph, Omud Tov Mem Beis. Sof Dibu Hamaschil Vayorach Hashem Esreich Anichoy Pashanoyach Ayin Daled, and we're holding now on Sof Omud Tov Mem Beis, and we saw that the Moshe of the Maturgiman was a Moshe for the concept of Mamutza Hamafsik. Are you alright, Moshe?
Sorry, just can't.
We began with the Achroza that there were two Oifani HaMamutza. There was a Mamutza HaMafsik and a Mamutza HaMachaber. So in the Dugma of Mamutza HaMafsik we brought the union of Keser Elyoin. She's possessed Shtei Madreges, Atik v'Arik, Pnimius v'Chetzenius, and that was what we call a Mamutza HaMafsik. In other words, that there's like Madregas be'emtza between the Ein Seif and the Ner Tzolim, which are the Esser spheres, and those Madregas biyachad they make up Keser Elyon. And Darchom is the Chabres of the Mashpia, or that's Ein Seif Baruch Hu, with the Mekabel. But even though Le'io in Perikov Tzadik Vav, which we mentioned here briefly, we came to the conclusion that Atik and Arik Bi'atzmom are not really the Etzem HaMamutza. We came to the conclusion that the Etzem HaMamutza was Chochmas Kimoa, for all sorts of reasons and biurin that we were masbir over there. But Sokotzov, Bli Atik v'Arik, it also wouldn't function, because Atik is the reader from the Ein Seif, from the Havdalah of the Ein Seif. To be Ner Takva Nivdal, what the union of Ner Takva Nivdal implies a certain kesher with the Ner Tzolim. Just as we said that Ner Takva Nivdal Mihem. But in the union of Atzmus Ein Seif himself, it's not even tried to talk about Havdalah. Even the concept of Havdalah is not correct. He's just completely and utterly not Shayach Klal. So the union of Atik is like the Yerida and the coming down, the Natia on the part of the Atzmus to be in a Madrega van Atik. Then the union van Arik is what is Nimto from that Madrega of Atik into the union of the spheres, or the unionim how they are in Arik Ampin. And from there, by way of direct Hashpoah, almost a Hashpoah, but Derech Erech, into the Esser spheres, the Atzilas, albeit with a certain union also of Havdalah Erech, but much more the concept of Hishtalshus or Erech than in the union of Atik Lagabi, the Ner Tzolim. So we saw that that union of Atik v'Arik, the Natia on the part of the Ein Seif, and the Yerida to become the union of Atik, and the union of Arik being Nimtzo Mimenu K'Moshe Maturgiman. Well, that was the union of the Mamutza HaMafsik, and that's what we were holding. Vadugma b'pchinas HaMamutza the Keser Elyon, the pchinas Atik, who neter v'nivdal legamrei, rakshi mimeno nimtzo b'pchinas oeres ta'arik. Nimtzo, we'll soon go into that in a second. V'chamish koser b'Eitz Chaim Sham Mem Aleph Perek Gimel, v'zo ma shemeya b'ner tzolim. Mikol Mokim zo al yidei shepchinas or Ein Seif, that means the Eivos how he is mamish b'pshitas or Ein Seif, naaseh b'pchinas Atik lo b'elam. In other words, that there was a certain ha'toka on the part of the Atzmus himself, that he was kilu yored liyos b'pchinas Atik, without really changing the etzem mahus of the Ein Seif, of it's already a Yerida ha'toka legabi the Ner Tzolim. And that's the second pshat is well known in the Inyan von Atik. The one pshat in Atik is Ne'atak v'nivdol, that's Lakabi the Mner Tzolim. And the other pshat is Vayatek Mishom, her order that he moved. He moved over and he moved his whole residence from that place over to that place. So that's the Inyan of the reader of the Atzmas, what is Ma'atikas Atzmei Lakabi the Ner Tzolim. Amamil Alidei, what he is yoyred in that Inyan of the Atoka, Klapi the Elamas, the Hare Ain Seif Mitzadatmi moved the Lagamri, the Eino Be'erach Hatoka Klau. The commission is Bulio Perikut Tzodik Bo, like we just quoted. That over there, the Hezbollah is that in Atzmas Ain Seif Mamish, it's not Shaykh even Hatoka, because he's just so complete. It's not even Shaykh the word Abdullah. He's just completely and utterly not Shayim. Alidei, the Inyan of Hatoker, on the part of the Ein Seif, that he becomes at least a Inyan Shal Atik, Alidei Zeh, he becomes Shaykh to eventually, through Chokmas Timur, to form the Kesher with the Arich, and then eventually to the Ner Tzolim. Alidei Shanas, B'chinas Atik, Hine Ha'oiras Anim Tzoim Mimenu, Shezeh B'chinas Arich, who Shemaya B'neh Tzolim. So here we see that we have to compare a minute to the Inyan of the whole Moshe of the Maturgaman that we saw. And here, in the Nimshal, there's one Inyan that we have to understand. There's also in the Moshel. The Hainu, that the Rav, even after all the Hashpoes, the Etzem Seichel Rav remains completely and utterly Nelam from the Am, from the Pshute Am. Makablim remains completely Behelam, and they're only Makabel what was Mislavish in the Chushim of the Maturgaman, and as we saw, his Chushim are Karivim Yesa, Leihem, than they are to the Chushim of the Rav. Because the Rav Lagabi was also behaved the era. So we have to say that the Dugma, the Inyan von Atik, on the part of the Rav, is not just Etzem Sikloi, or Etzem Nesiusai, but the Etzem Rotzen, the Etzem, what you might call Milui HaKavona, on the part of the Rav, that he wants to get over to the Am. He knows the Tzokos of his Tachlis, and what you might call his whole Kavona, is eventually to teach the people. He's not there just to know the Inyonim Le'atzmon, or eventually to get them across to the Am. Therefore, we have to say that his Madrega Mamish B'fnei Atzmei, that's al Deravid Inyan von Ein Seif, which you can't even say that that's B'havdolah, it's just B'tachlis Arichut, Mi'am L'gam. There's a Hatoka B'atzmei from the Rav, a certain Inyan Mitad the Amitiyas, a Kavona, how you do allow that he's Ma'atikas Atzmei Klapei the Am, and then from that there becomes then a shaykhis that something should go over, albeit B'derech we saw Hamtzoha, not B'derech Kesher, Mamish B'derech Hishtausas into the Chushim of the Makabel. And we were very careful to say that he only gets what is really like another Inyan. He doesn't really get it, and we brought the whole dogma of how one Inyan can produce another Inyan. And he was marrying not more in the Inyan of Samach Bal. So we see that, and we were medactic to say that when one Inyan produces another Inyan, that means that the first Inyan remains per Abdullah, b'toich atzmi, mashahu, because it's one Inyan, and the other Inyan, Shef Shah, L'mod Mizeh, is also an Inyan, but you can take from this Inyan to that Inyan. When you do that, you're really taking an Inyan which is only a ha'ora b'derech Havdolah Sa'era. You're not really, and therefore that can be called al-derech, and therefore the Lashon which occurs here is nimto. But I looked at somewhere he doesn't use that Lashon kemat b'klal, but over here he says nimto. Nimto seichel eitzim mashpia, nimto eitel amaturgaman. So that's al-derech v'deina from ha'chochma mi'ayin timo timotzei, which means that even from the Mokkeh of Chochmah, how it is in Atik, in Arich, even in the Chochmah Gluya is also a von Timotzei. It's a von Amtzor, not a von Nishtaushel, it's Begolo, as a well known. It's a von Hevdera Erech also. Chokmah Me'ayin Timotzei. And we could say here that the same way that it's nimshad from the hatocha of the Rav, which is already making himself shy to be episamokir for the Mekablim, but that also goes in and even from a Chokmah Me'ayin Timotzei, even to the inyan of the Oros the Arich. Even they are in a Oivon Amtzor Bilvat, like Abiyad is in Atik. And the same thing in the inyan, how it is Lamaila, if there weren't the first Natiyah on the part of the Ein Seif. But that's the inyan of Atik, Be'emes, then there wouldn't begin the whole possibility that Chokmah Stimor could be Makasha with the Oros of Arich. And then eventually be Makasha into the Ner Tzolim. So I saw the Shalim both the Moshe and the Nimshal. I mean, not that we actually deal with that here, but just the Shleimus Ha'inen, auch upon him, just to be more the diuk, even if we're not mechaven to the Amitis HaKavanah, but over the Shaila, what brings that the Ein Seif, which is Mudal in Azar, even it's not even shy to say it's Mudal. It's Havdalah, it's not a Havdalah, it's a complete and utter, Richuk Ha'eret, B'tachlis. How does that come down, and how does that make the inyan from Atik? How does it make that step that at least becomes Ne'atak Kilo Min Koimei into being a inyan from Ne'atak V'nivdal, which is Atik? And the same by the Rav. Why does he begin this whole inyan that takes him towards the Maturgaman? And then even then, what he gives him Maturgaman is also a inyan which comes with Derech Havdalah Sa'erach, a inyan from Chokmah Me'ayin Timotzei, like we just touched. So I thought the shadow, what makes this whole thing work? Here we see that this goes down, okay, so it goes down, and now becomes shy to be some sort of a market, albeit not a market. And then all of a sudden that's Nimto, and this is Nimto, and this is a Chokmah Me'ayin Timotzei, and this inyan leads to another inyan, but doesn't really, there's some sort of Gula Dikinyonim which are happening here all the way through. It's all like happening, but it's not happening. It's happening, but we can't really must be how it is. We can just say that. If we just learn the Indian Bapashtu, it's in Kachazet. That's the way it is. So we have to say that something is working here, even though this mamutza is a mamutza mavdil, and it's not. It's not really the emphasis kashus atzmi is within the Tzolim. So. The kavanah is that there should be Ner Tzolim, and so that's a rotzen, and alidei what there'll be Ner Tzolim, eventually there'll be Nivroim, and then eventually there'll be the whole Inim and Taktoinim, and there'll be who knows eventually what will be, and eventually there has to be Moshiach, and eventually it's got to be Tachas Umiyad Akshov, not eventually, it's got to be Tachas Take of Miyad Mamish. There's something behind the whole. There's something working. So we have to say that that's what's Mavua, the Rambam Mekim, is that Atik is the inyan of Oinig and Tainuk, more than the inyan from Rotz. Arik is already the inyan from Rotz. That's what we always say. Now we're going down that way and we're going to go for it. But that's the inyan of Rotz. Kamavua and Tamavua, that really they're two separate koiches, but they do work together in many inyanim. The Tainuk produces a inyan from Rotz and B'derach. Not that it always has to, but it does. We can suggest that so why all these things happen, both by the Rav and by Lamaila, in mitzvah the fact that there's inyanim and then there's a kavanah, what is meant in all the inyanim. In other words, that there's hidden behind all this is the kavanah sa'matzil, as it's called. What is your will, the Rebbe? So not only what does he want, but what is his ultimate oinig kaviyachol? What is the inyan which is ma'afil? These inyanim is nisave hakodesh baruch Hu. With nisave the inyan from oinig, the inyan from time. Why is there this sudden leaning which makes the whole thing possible? That's called atik on the part of the Ein Seif. It's a thing that just doesn't have to happen for sure by definition. Unless it's called mokim. Why should it happen? Why should the Ein Seif make himself a bechina taktina in his own self? What is not moving? We say geitas. So we have to say that that's a inyan also which is as gula bilti moving la makablim, and those are the etzem oinig of the Ein Sof, call it the atzmus tainug haposhet, or call it already the tainug hamulukav haposhet. There's different gedorim in that. Also, there's a in the kavan, and we have to say that that's the whole. What's working here is the whole purpose of the creation, the whole purpose and the whole tachlis of nisava kodesh baruch hu yisla dira p'taktaini. In the word nisava is already merumas the inyan oinig shabadol. And that becomes, since that the pnimis oinig, that becomes kilo the kavana, the inyan works in an oven which is a moving, and that's maybe also nirmas in what the famous Pisgah of the Alter Rebbe, that Avakasha is Avataiva is Kankashi. It's also, why and via that's not our inyan. We don't really know. Oh, but that's it. That's the yoinig ha'elion. But the same thing with the Rav. The Rav, sof inyan is that he knows that why is he from the Chachmei Yisrael? What's he doing? But Mokim Kazeh, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Mereim and Moisei al Roi Vabriyos, Bismanu, and he became a mention, a koyach, and he knows, and he has to know that bifnim there's a kavanah, and there's a tachlis b'inyan there. And remember, that's what causes him to bring all the people together. B'chol Shabbos, Rov Shabbos is Hachana. He had to bring them all together, and he was noitim mi gadlusay. Well, that's a yerida, and that to a certain extent it's a Mesiras Nefesh. It's a inyan l'mayla mi medida v'agbola in the Etzeminian. If I remember, he's yer v'noite klapei the am. Once that happens, then there's already a mock here from Wilchemikon. Also, b'derech segula, or it's already got a shaykhis more mi ayin timotei into the further bechina, which is Ari. Well, say Nachanami, that is Magbod, in that chapter, that in that guvi you need a kesher point in the middle. That's well, that's not our inyan here, because we're only concerned with the etzem. Ultimately, once you get that, then Mamela you're going to have that. And Mamela, it comes to Isla that we're talking about inyanim was, they are, as it were, the secret of the ganze Kavanah Sabriya and the ganze Nisava makes these things move. Ain't kol hezbollah for which why will all of a sudden ain't safe? Be noit to a certain madrega through which he's eventually going to reach Netzolim. You're talking about a madrega which completely and utterly moved al betachlis. Ain't was a ko erech. I mean, not even an erech shebeishu erech. Or eishu heda.
So the Rav mashpir to the Metogman is an union of Kavan. It's domain in Nisava.
Yeah, not so much in Nisava, but a beetle to the Nisava. He already knows that those are the tachlis. And who you're there, that there's a whole reason why he became a Rav. And what stood there, what's his inyone? His inyone is not just to know the inyone, but the inyone is to bring them to Yidden. And he knows that that's tachlis, that was their inyone. And those are amiti, it's Indian of a Rav. Those are Rav amiti. That he knows that he can't just remain V'gadlusa v'avdolosa. He's got to come he's got to get to the people. He's got to find a way to bring it to the people. And so those are the Rebbe. I mean, the Rebbe was Avdola she'ein lanu musig, Avdola she'kazu. All the Rebbeim was a kind of called Rebbe Otzim Shukirel Yisrael. It was waiting for the Avdola she'erech. I mean, in Rishonim we understand the Rishonim of Nefzah. Musik and how they worked and how they functioned was the whole Veda word. We are saying das gegangen. I mean, take the Rambam. Ein Mensch kommt massig sein, wie das ist. Gamrei lamayla mikol efshoriyim, v'tayeh. And I say this with all the Rishonim. Roi mishanem mi, the Ramban. I mean, that doesn't matter who you take. It's legamri mudo betachlis. Ein was a kol erech. Lagabe anoshim kerkeinu. In Vizay, how did they come down? Vizay, did they make this whole kesher? And Vizay, did they give over all the unbelievable inyanim that they did? Or that's that inyan from the Natiyah from the Havdalah. Like the Rebbe once said once by Farbrengen. He said, what did he need this whole thing for? He could have stayed I forget what language he used, but the implication was he could have stayed in the ivory tower if he was up there. He could have stayed there somewhere. What did he need the whole thing? Was it to get up and to come somewhere else? But then it is a natia on the part of the Rabbi. Yesh lema that the Moshel and the Nimshel Amagala want to take the other of those sinyonim. Amamir Nimshel if he's there, that it's a door pillar. Mamsha Hainya Nivla and a scholar Amuka Beyesa this whole picture here. Amamir that's the Indian how it works Pagoloi and Yesh lema bederach ersha abisel the bio meachorei hashuris is that what we just said. Okay, my Cain says the Rebbe who be in actors. Similarly, is it in the Indian the Indian actors? The liyesha magia bepinas atik, bepinas pnimis hakeser. What the Indian keser is also what we just spoke about. Keser mitad echad is already matim el Indian arosh. It's got a certain shaykhs to the Indian arosh. Over Ulaidok, it's indicatory of a Havdolah Sa'era. Shain Kamoyo, Kamuvan. Adav Kalidei the Keser is the whole Hatolas Habitul Gabidiam. When they see the Keser, that's when they all become bottled. Some people were created by that. Alidei Zeh, who Mamshi Puchinas Arik, Davki by reaching the Indian of Atik, then he can already be Mamshich, he can bring out the Bechina of Arik. However that is. Who Giloi Bechinas Madrega Zu. In other words, that he's Megala that, and he brings in the Giloi or that Indian in Atik, how it's now able to be Megala the Indian van Arik. In other words, he reaches Atik, but he reaches Atik because Atik is so kosof Inyone legalis the Indian van Arik. Avo is a Mekol Mokim. Who Giloi beginners Chitonius Akesa Levad. Since he reaches the Indian from Atik, but he reaches Atik how it's already in that Bechina that Mimenu Yete. In other words, not that he reaches the Havdolah Sheba Arich, but he reaches Arich how it's already Shire to give over this Hamtzoah into the Indian from Chitonius Akesa, and therefore Sof that's what he brings out. In other words, that the Keteris reaches the Indian from Atik Amnam, or he reaches Atik, how it's Indian is already to be Mamti, the Indian of the Chitzenius Akesa. V'zeu b'ishkashus shebo'ilamas, v'zeu b'ishkashus shebo'ilamas, shamamutza ma sik. Oh, that's the ishkashus, how it is in Oilamas. What there, the mamutza is mafsik, the hainu, that there's the Indian of Sai Atik and Sai Arich, a kilo in the middle between the Mekablim, which means Oilam Atzilus in the beginning, the Ne'atzolim, and the Ein Seif Mamish. They got these two Madregas, and like we pointed out over there in Kuf Tzadik, a very key chapter, we pointed out Barichas that it's not really either of them either. There's like this middle point in the middle, which is Chokmas Timur. So therefore we have to have a whole union of these Bechinas, being the Etzem Havdolah or the Etzem Lamayla Havdolah of the Mashpia, and the Pshitas and the Heder HaYecholos of the Makabel, and that's the union in Oilam Askamkein. But there's all these Madregas be'emtza. Masha Enkein Aish Kashrus im Neshomis Yisrael, and we mentioned that earlier in a slightly different even. Well, we did mention earlier this concept that these Kashrus are the Eibusha with Neshomis Yisrael. Who beginners is kashrus etem be'etem she'eina mamutza mafsik. Because of b'makim achad. Now here he doesn't go into. He just more or less says it and leaves you to be makabel without any hezbollah. So we have to say that the biur is b'derech efsher, just b'derech kitzer bilbad, that the difference between Neshomas b'chol ha'mekaymes is that their inyan is pnimiyas ve'ilu inyan ha'oilamas v'amalochim their inyan is chitonias, and b'pnimis b'zeh gufa the inyan of the Neshomas is what they never really become nivroim. The truth of the matter is that even though we say Ato Veroso, Ato Yutzato, Ato Nafato, we go through the different madrigas, which look as if the neshama becomes a nivro, but it's muvur, become a mekaymes. In the works of the Rebbe the Talmud Tzedek, in the Biur Yazeh, there's a famous passage. And in other mekaymes, that the neshama only becomes b'chitzoniusa a nivro, kilo, it becomes shy to the union of nivro. But be'emes, the neshama remains even lamata a inyan eloki. And that's the inyan of chelak helakah, that mitzad pinmiusa, that never really alters, and the whole inyan what the shinuim b'negeh to oilamos is only in the oifim vid the neshama becomes shy to the inyan of oilamos. And even in that kufa, we call it nivra, we also call it slightly with our tongue in the cheek. You know, we call it nivra also because if you look carefully in the moshel, in Perek Beis, in Tanya, and you see the whole moshel over there, from the tipa atzma, everything sort of kilo, yoiludum is galit, it all comes out, you know, mamish, the hexer otzum im the etzem tipa, you can see it's not an Indian shell, nivra or nivdal, it's not an Indian for nishtaushel either. It's like how the etzem itself is mishtayev into these inyonim of all of them remain mekusha with the etzem. Which means that the neshama really never stops being, never really loses its kesher with its own mokeh, which is chelak helakah mimah. The neshama is mamish, b'chol hamadrega shebo is mamish shayat to elakus b'emes. If the neshama is oile into inyona, particularly higher than that shaykhs to the elements, what's by the odam, it's higher than shayt to naram. Then you go up into the atzmiyim sheba neshama, chaya or yechida, or even higher than that. Then you go into a level where the etzem of the neshama is begolui, and what is that? That's mamish shayt to the inif and etzem alakus. And if the inif and Pnimius Atik, which is already shy to the Ein Seif, forbids mamish with the neshamas, and doesn't really need the whole, hatocha with the whole imotze into arev and the whole inyan. That the neshama itself is kilo makusha directly into Ein Seif mamish. That's a famous inyan that the neshamas don't really need anything; they just are makusha be'etzem to Ein Seif. That these kashas is a kashas etzem be etzem. In other words, etzem meaning the neshama being makusha in etzem ein seif. If I to a certain extent, the whole inyan of atik v'ari, the whole rich is not nogeya here. The neshama is her own mamutza. In other words, the neshama and her madregas, they are herself the kesher with the atzmas chelak helakah mimah. It's another inyan altogether. The madregas shebentayim, which are makasha between the chelik olive and the neshama, and the etzem neshama mamisha chelik helakah. Well, they're all inyanim which are not mafsik. They just lead on different daragas into elokut. What is going on? That's a famous biur. What the Rebbe said here about Yud Shvat, what the world tried to catch it and make a whole scandal, and the Masnagrim had a yemazeh, still porking from Poro V'Shama to machen with them scandal. And what the Rebbe said, that the inyan of a Rebbe is a mamutza she'ina mafsik. And he said, therefore, it's inyan von atzmas ain't safe. Yeah, beguf. In other words, what does that mean? Pictures if the neshama is beguf and the neshama is makusha in atzmas ain't safe. Then a Rebbe is a mitzvah. The etzem and neshama is meir and betachlis ivameir. Meir the inyan, the ishabas of the neshama in atzmas. It's meir by him begolo. Ain't sorry shum mamutza v'shum minyonim klal afila in the neshama guru, because the inyan eikshu in atzmas is anyway by him b'shleimus agilu yadavar. That's the way he is. Geishtech and kopa v'kachet. That's what the whole inyan is. That a Rebbe is also, he's a mamusa hamakasha, he's not a mamusa hamafsik, because he's the etzem kesher of neshama lamata with the atzmas, how it is begolo, his whole anog is in an under he doesn't need all the inyan events. So what does he need? He can bring you, and he can help you, and he can bring Makashi you into Ein Sof. There was the inyan. In other words, that the whole inyan van a Rebbe is me'anit v'shleimus haneshama. It's the shleimus of a inyan of a neshama. Das ist die inyan von neshama le neshama, die inyan von Yechida HaKlali. So, ההפרש בין הקורבנות לקטוירס. The korban is imi yeshezahu gam kein inyan abirudim. What the inyan von gam kein, meaning that's also an inyan of an inyan naila b'yesa, and the inyan von birudim also reaches into the kavana al-yoina. Mikol mokim liyeshezahu b'chinas iskafye. It's not the shleimus of the sapre of the whole hefta of the oilam and the nivra into elikus. It's only an inyan of iskafye. It's only an inyan of what you might call the kivush hara sheboy, kivush hara. Who b'chinas is pashtus the nefesh abami is lovad. Okay, magia lamayla rapu b'chinas ha'er machi v'ashayach ela pnimi. In other words, in order to be koyvish and nefesh abami and to be mamish matishas koychoy v'chuli, you need also a koyach elyon ein chovish mata satmita. The Naran are not quite able to manage that. They can only bring up certain koyches of a mamish to be pogeya in the etamishpashtus of the nefesh abamis. Then you need a inyan from a makiv, but that's a makiv v'shayach ela pnimi, like we take so inyan of the reich of a Michael is a inyan which is shayach of course to the etamachila. Avu ketoiras shehu inyan reyusa deliba, but that's the inyan of the void of mitzad the makifim shebenefesh. Shepoel be'etzem ha'mahus the nefesh abami b'chinas isapcha. Now in that kufa we're going to see two madrigas. There's the inyan of how Keteras Stam is magia b'madrigazu, but that's shayach nonetheless to the inyan von Arik. It's shayach nonetheless to Amshocha in Chitonius Oilamas. And then we're going to see the ultimate inyan von Isapcha in the Keteras de Yom Kippurim. We're going to see in Keteras Kufa new vistas and new madrigas, but that'll be only von Isapcha mamish. So Shadova HaChorif Neafach Ladova Orev. You remember we had the whole marshal with the Tzikei Kedera, with the Basmela, with the whole Arichas. What she wanted Davkid, the inyan of the Dwarim, which were Nishorim, Tzikei, Berikot, Shulei HaKedera, what they give off a Reach Chorif, of a Sof Kasov. Somebody who's mamish, in a state of Tzimoy and Amiti, then it becomes a Dova Orev, and he wants Davkid out of nothing. That he's in a state of chusha, then he wants tafkid out of nothing other. But that's indicatory that the Dova HaChorev is really nefach be'etzem mahusay. Harizeh magir b'chinas atzmus eitzei. That already goes into l'mayla mean and a chizuk, not just a chizuk from the Or Makiv, it's nimshik in the pnimi, but that goes into the Or Makiv itself. Ve'am shocher hi the b'chinas ha'Or Makiv. The Hainu b'chinas oyer ein sof shel ha'mayla mishtalshelos nimshachu meir b'chinas gilui mamish. However, despite the fact that it's gilui mamish, it's still got some sort of a shaykhus to the inyan of ishtalshelos. It's not, or upon it to the inyan for chitonias. It's not mamish the inyan for nisafcha b'shleimus amuven, but it's in isafcha gufa like the beginning. It's like. So we're going to see here an interesting inyan, that in Isapcha itself, like two bechinas or two shleimasim. That's one inyan that the nefesh abamish becomes shayches to be shayches to inyan eloki, and then there's another inyan where he's nisapik be'etzem mohusa, and he himself becomes the rak inyan shogile elokus and teikef ha'arotzi into elokus mamish. The Rav Tluis Bekoyach Shoya. Al Pia now Yuma Mashkosu Medrash Rabbah Al Posi Vayorach Hashem as Reach Anichoyach Hareach. I'm sorry. He reach that the Eivster brought in Medrash Rabbah that the Eivster was Maria the Reach Shel Avram Avinu Olava V'Sholem. So we asked Yishai, we'll check out to the Wooded. We're talking about Korbanos. There wasn't even reach shel Avraham Avinu. V'ayna b'chinas hareach the Mesirus Nefesh to bepoil mamish. He had the reach of Mesirus Nefesh bepoil mamish. Bittul etemama hus. In other words, not iskafia, not just the pu'ula in the ispashtus of the Nefesh Abamis and what he has to say and what he has to show for himself, but already a pagia in the mahus. Meaning, the bittul etzem mahus means that it coil everything. If you bottle etzem mahus, that means that you bottle through and through, meaning even the chelach hachiyuni. I don't want to use by a wrong, Allah should the chelach hachiyuni is also bottle, or at least on its way to being completely bottle. Shali they said, Davke nimshak b'chinas atzmas eirein, say, it's much higher than the Inyan HaKorbanis. Hagam, it's well known, the Klal and the Zohar Kodesh, the Rosa de Korbana, Oila ad Rosa de Ein. So if it's well known that the Pnimius, Rosa means the Inyan from the sword, the sword of the Korbanis reaches into Ein Seif, meaning the Urshel Amayla Miasviras. Shema'ero mamshich b'chinas ha'oyer makif, mikol mokim amshochu b'chinas pnimi, v'achshu b'chinas toisef ha'zoyer, shu inyan chizuk ha'chayes, aval ha'chayes avaloi chayes chadosh. In other words, that's a chayes which Sof is really afilu mitzad the makif, how he shot to the inyan from pnimi. Is remember the ike inyan is a toisefes in the pnimi. It's not mamish on oil chodosh. It's a oil which loi tomid mitzad etzem seidish aushlus, but it's a inim with sok or so. It's got a certain kiddo to the inim. Ishtauslus, vinyone is to be poil based aushlus, and therefore you can't really call the oil chodosh mami. I mean, you can't say it's not chodosh beklau of a mitzad hashen. It's not the inim from chidush bietem. ובכדי להמשיך המשוך החדושו מבחינס עצמיוס הגרעין, זהו דווקא על ידי ריח הקטוירס, שהוא ביטל בעצם המהוס. Here we see this lotion again, בעצם המהוס, meaning in the עצם makeup of the Adam, בכל עניונו, meaning גם החיוני וגם הנפש הלקיס. זהו גם כן שהאימא כאן שהריח ריח של ארומה Vino, שהוא בחינת ביטל בעצם המהות. The Indian of Avraham Avinu was, how do you call it, the Indian fan? Ma, Eivar Maz is well known, the famous beer when he got to Avraham Avinu. He was just an Eivar of Ma. His whole Indian was bitul lagamri. Until he didn't even realize the Indian of Mesirus Nefesh. He didn't know how to be Madul by Mesirus Nefesh, Leveda Regila, because that was whole Mahusay. Ali they said, Davke, Loya Isi Voidle, Kalel. And then the Abish said, he's not going to ever bring the Indian van a klola al klola sabrier achmonin itla. So the Rebbe said, Hine gabi amabu hoya tzorik lis amshocha al derech lahoshi vesanev. That's a kesher with reach, that there had to be as amshocha, which is like the reach. What we saw, that the reach has this power to bring back and be re-megala the nefesh from its abdullah if there's a isalfet. So he said that in the Inyan HaMabul there was also a necessity for there to be that oifan agiloi. I'm sorry, Sha'arei b'shas HaMabul hoya b'chinas siluk ha'oyer. That kaviyochu, the whole oyer, even the oyer which is l'mayla mi-ishtaushus, but shaitu ishtaushus, all that was in an oifan from ishtaushus where, how do you call it, helam gomer, it left the whole situation. In other words, the Kilo, the Inyan HaMabul was a bitl from the whole setup. It was like a bitl of the whole Seder, what we call of Gilui, or the whole Marocha of Pnimis HaOilema. I'm sorry, of Ishtalfus HaOilema. Therefore, somebody shot to you. לא, אתה לא מפריע. אמר מילא, הנה גבי המבול הויה צורך ליש המשוחה על דרך להושי וזנב. שהרי בשעס המבול הויה בחינת סילוק הויה. Siluk meaning in von complete helle. Like we say, like Gabi de Golos, Kuchubriku is Stalker, La Eila Ola. Eila, dat is de zin of Siluk meaning in von Helem, La Gabi de Makablim, La Gamri. Ukamesha Kosov, Hashem Lamabul Yoshov. Or Hashem Lamabul Yoshov, Vayeshev Hashem Melech Le'elam. So we see that the Eibishter was Yoshev Be'inan Amabul. So one of the Pirushim is that Yoshev Loshen Yeshiva, but that's Loshen Ashpola Sakoimo. When a man sits and he's mashpil, Koimosim will Maila Lamata into any infant symptom of katnas. So normally we say that Hashem Lamabul Yoshev, that was enough in Yerida, but symptom Viskas, particularly when I get to the Hemshech Apostle, by Yeshev Havaya Melech Le'elam, in order there should be Melech Ha'elam, Ataki de Yoshev. Although it brings the Rebbe Azoya Kodesh, well, here he ties his Yoshev with the ties Kiludi he sat on his own. He called it completely alone. In other words, not so much here the Inin von Ashpola, but like the Inin of Avdollah V'Menucha. When a man sit to be alone, as it were, then that's a Inin of Menucha Stalkes from his normal Asokim. Edifar, because of Hashem Lamabul Yoshev, touched the Zohar Kodesh, Yoshev Bilchu Doihi. He sat Bilvade, but all on his own. In other words, the Kilo, all the other Inyonim which are normally there, he was Masalik himself from the Legamri. The Oisha Shona Loi Shimshu Hamazolis. That during that whole Shona Tamima, there wasn't the Eira Shemesh and not the Eira Alavona with all the other mazoles, Loi Shimshu. They were all Kilub in a state of Histalkus, like Abide Adeohilam. And remember, that's indicatory that not only the Eibishter was Mavdil himself, even that he left everything just to run on its own, but he stopped the whole, as you might call the whole Mareches, was Mispatel. And remember, everything Kilub reached a state of Bittel, Kol Anhoge, Mitzad the Histalkus, of the Mashpil Amaita. Kol Seder Hanhoge. In other words, that the whole Seder. So why does the Rebbe say Nishtana Kol Seder Hanhoge? Kisok something did remain. I mean, there was a ruined world of everything geblieben. Some sort of a possibility that the whole thing could start over again was to geblieben. So there we have to say that the whole thing which changed was the Hanhoge, not that there was just nothing completely. Not that everything went back to Ayin, but it was in a state of Shinoi Kol Anoga, was only a Orach Hitanius Bilvad, which was Machzik, it's Kol Marech. At the start, the expression in English has it, at the start all over again. So there had to be a new Amshocha from the Atz, from the Helema Atzmik. The silk was inside the Etzem. We had to go back to the Etzem and call it out. So Alter Vidim from Rosh Hashanah is a similar idea that everything Kil Afarega is still tzachot, the whole Seder Noga on Leil Rosh Hashanah and Adat Kiyas Shalamochers, the whole Seder is a Heichitesi sort of a inin. It's a inin for Chitanias Bewar Kimavur in all the Drushim but again to Rosh Hashanah. And therefore at the Biyam Shocha Chadosha Mami Alze Oma Sheheriach Reach Shel Avroma Vinu V'Chananya Mishael V'Azaria, what they were in this month from Nebuchadnezzar, what they were Nishlochim, also Kivshin Ha'Eish as well known. Avraham Avinu was Mushlap Kivshin Ha'Eish, and they were also thrown into the Kivshin Ha'Eish. And they also came out Shleimim, Shalidei Mesiras Nefesh B'Poyel Mamish B'Pinas Bittel Kolamavus Alidei Zeh Mamshichim Gile Chodosh Mamish. In other words, it depends how much you're giving away. If you're giving away completely, so I mean, somebody who's muchen to be nishlap b'kivshan ha'eish, then that's a taisa kol ha'koyach ha'chiyuni sheboy kol ha'inin, kol ha'nefesh elakis kol ha'inyonim. And Lorach said, if you think about Avraham Avinu, Adam Regahu, he'd already achieved something in Yonim. I mean, that he called it Ukiton in the world. It means that Beregahu, he was prepared to put everything into how do you call it, a sakona, not only does a sakona come out a clear vado, is that the whole thing is just going to be in his batil. And Kol Mashe Hisig, Adarega, he was just prepared to hashli and throw himself into the fire. And the fire, that's a bitl kola moves. It's down. There's not only legabi the other matchman, or even legabi Mashu who Ki'ilu, what you can say, a mention's nana mimaisa yoda, so forth, so. And the whole thing. Amamela says the Rebbe Adizay there, Mamshichim Gile Ur Chodosh Mamish. Those are the even Gile Ur Chodosh, meaning a Ur which is completely a Milamish Taushel, and it's not shy a cloud, and it's never been there, Begolo Yinish Taushel. Yeah, in other words, it's a new thing. Legabe afile legabe atik v'arik. This is a gile from the Avdolas Ayetzer. And Afu became with them alle men. It's still in what all of it. It's only shot to Chitonius Oilam. And it is Mamshi Gile Chodesh. Mami Zeker She'oma Shom. Gam came b'medrash Rabbah Shehiriach Reich Doirei Shel Shmad. It's written over there. Not only Hanani Mishol Ba'azadiyeh, but it was Doira Shel Shmad. Doira Shel Shmad means the Doiras after the Kibush HaRoimi of Eretz Yisrael. But the Indian of the Romans was Lahashrish Esayad. It's not just to bring the Yidden under their hand, but Mamish Lahashrish Legam is called Ayad. Albeit Bishlavi Musayom, but that was Kavan Hosan. And also in the Deros Liachrim is in the Golas. So Doira Shel Shmad doesn't mean any Doir in particular, even though it's brought down in another medrash that the Doir of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was already called a Doir Shel Shmad, even though he was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was Milano Godel Miseh, Loi Roasa. Had he could Lo Rasa Keshes Biyoma with the ganze Arichas. But nonetheless, the Arum is Shingevem Bitter. It was only the beginning of the Indian Golas Kipshute. Amamira Doire Shel Shmad doesn't mean Hananiah Mishael Azariah. It doesn't mean Avraham Avinu. That means the Geweintliche Menschen. Had he called the people of the whole generation, not the Tzadikim Gedolim that they were Mashlich Esatzvim with Techa. Aish, no, Doira Shel Shmad means the ordinary people that they gave themselves away from the they weren't prepared to be Nishman. They fought for the Yiddishkeit neged Koiches Hatzum. And therefore the Indian from Russia is also the Zovazah. The whole Indian from Soviet Russia is the Indian from Doira Shel Shmad, but even a key marvel that's been in history. And that's what the Medrash is moised. That's only the individuals here, what you might call the other Minashura, that they stood also, but Tatlis on Mesilas Nefesh, Shemamshichim Ali Deizir Gili Chodosh. I'm sorry, where are we? Doira Shel Shmad Vahainu, Amanias Vikuvim Al Kiyum HaMitzvos B'Pel Mami. In other words, Manias Vikuvim B'Klolas Ha'am, that they're not able to be Mekayim Torah Mitzvos B'Pel Mami. They stand strong, and they said they're not going to give in, like it was in the time of the Romans. But Rova Adoiras, B'Meshech HaGolas, B'Even Zeh or Acher, it was B'Even Kozeh, until, as we pointed out, we had the whole Indian from the Shoyer Rachmanin Etlan Hoyer L'Siyeh, the Indian of the Golas in Soviet Russia, V'chulu, or all these Inyonim. Yeah, so you might say, what's it the Indian? What was your woman? So the answer is that Ali Deizer Mamshichim Gilei Chodosh. So the Rebbe's Indian is that okay, we've been Mamshich the Chodosh, and it's all been Nimshal Begola. Is now we have to go with the Chodosh into Aliyahs, Achrei Aliyahs. Now it's come the time for the Shleimus and the what you might call the Seif. Kol ha'inyonim of the Shmad and the Aschola of the what you might call the Iskalas, Kol Mimshaltei, Kol Geil Mamlachtei of the Melech HaMashiach, and the union of the Chodesh Madrega LaMadrega. So V'yorach Hashem Esreach Hanichoyach, Al Pi Poshet Hu Reach HaKorbanos. L'chora, the pasuk means Reach HaKorbanos. Yesh loima shezo hamshachah b'chinas yichud chitzoni the chachma bina shehim shechnoyach. In other words, that's a inyan also of a oyer l'mayla mishtaus. It's well known to be miyached two inyanim. You have to have a oyer shelamayla mihem. Aber so kosof it's a yichud chitzoni, and therefore its inyan is kiyum ha'olamas, as you might say, kiyum ha'olamas al tzad ha'yesa rotzui. Of a Medrash Rabbah, well, it's well known that the Medrash Rabbah is already dealing from Pnimis HaTorah, Al Chaponim B'derech Mamutza. The Medrash Rabbah being already a Biyu Pnimi in the Inim, Mavayish, Areach, Yeshehiriach Reach, the Eibusha was Kaviyocha, Maria, the Reach, Shal Rama Vinu, Al Vasholim B'Mesiras Nefesh, B'Poel Mamish, Hainu B'Chinas Bittul Amahus, the complete bittul of his whole being, Shalidei Zeh, Mamshichim Gilui Chodosh Mamish. Meaning not just a Chodosh which is Machazik the Pnimi, nor a Chodosh Mamish that Ein Leze Ko Mokim Ad Koi in the whole Seder in Gilui Yishtav Shal Seder. Here we see a Tova Pele, we see Mamish a Inyan Niflo, that the Medrash Rabbah learns that the Ike, what the Eibishter was Maria, was a Inyan which is Eina Muzka B'Pasik Atzmi. It's not mentioned in the pasuk. Therefore, the Rebbe said, "But there are pashtas, al pi poshet mamish pshat pasuk here. They're talking about the Idim from Yaakov. Noach wasn't maktik teres. He was maktik v'kob. No gabi amizbeya. After became the Medrash of Mechadish that since there's a inyan here on Reah, because normally speaking there is an inyan from Reah by korbanos. It's written that the Eivus was by Yorach Hashem as Reah the whole thing that was Shayach here, or the Iki Inyan by the Eivus, was the Yorach Havayas Reah. There's a simple that we're talking here about a Inyan from Reah. And the Chiddush of the Medrash is that we're talking about a Reah Pnimi, what Einoch Hanami, that wasn't B'Yichoylas Noyak, Bo'isa Achor, to be Makriv Tavakas there, or Kilo the Pnimis of them Reah, the Eivus the Kilo be Mabat Likros. Ha'osi, the Eivus was already here Maria, the Inyan from Reach HaKetoras. And in that Kufa, he was Maria, the Mesiras Nefesh of the Tzadikim. Va'amei Kulam Tzadikim, alle Yidden sind in dem Madrege, the Inyan from Tzadikim, when he gave the Inyan there, that's a Chiddush Niflo on the part of the Medrash Rabbah. It's a Dova Bilti Rotzoi, a Bilti Rogio rather, it's a Dova Bilti Rogio. And this is a Inyan which is Machazik, the whole beer, and the Rav Seinu, the Sienu, that the Inyan of Medrash is the Inyan from the move towards the beer of Pipnimis HaTorah. So Davki Bipnimius, the Ike had Gosha on Reach is Davki, a Inyan Sheina Muvua, Begoli in the Posse. Chiddush, a Chiddush Pele. Good, this all the Efse Hofen, so I take it with Poyo. As I'll say in the Chodesh, Kipshute, without any more return to any Inyan of Golos, and it was again, me Chayal Uchoyel, me Madrega la Madrega with the Chodesh, Be'ez Hashem. Take him Yad Mamish. Tonight's the Inyan of Tomchei Tmimim. So it's very interesting, he mentions the Inyan from Mesiras Nefesh, that the whole Inyan from Tomchei Tmimim was to be Mo'era, the Aveda from Mesiras Nefesh. And we see that all the Talmidim from Tomchei Tmimim, that they went out into the world, and their Inyan was to be, as if he, the Inyan for Chananim, Shol, Vasadia, managed to go in Inyanim, which were Lamayla Mi Medida Vagbala, Lamayla Mi Seichel, and to be Poyo, the Inyan for Amshocha Chadosha, but there are Tmimas, there are Pshitas, into the world. But that's the Inyan from Tomchei Tmimim, that's Mishtitz Tunter, Merov Tunter, the Inyan from the Tmimas. That means that we placed the Ike Had Gosha, even though there was a Hasoga, but it was a Hasoga which its whole Inyan was to lead to Tmimas. Kamua here in Iron Basin, much earlier, we learned it, but we learned it right at the beginning when I started. So Hashem should hope that the Be'er Zikorin L'Yom Rishon, we should go back to the beginning of Tomchei Tmimim, those days. And we should remember all those Inyanim, Ayomim, Wa'el, and Nizkorim, V'nasu. Good. Okay, guys.
I was wondering, in the Yom Yom, it says Tesvav Be'el was the foundation.
Huh?
Kisvav Elul was the Yisyastu.
Right.
And on Chai Elul, they started learning.
They started learning. And Tes Zayin, they started already, if I'm not mistaken, they started already bringing the Bochrim in and beginning the cooking of the food. And
3 days.
so it's 3 days. It's 3 days. Or 4 days. It's Tes Vav, and then Tes Zayin, and then Yud Zayin, and Chai. Chai El was the actual beginning of the learning away from the Suda. But if I'm not mistaken, there's another place where the rabbis had already on Yud Zayin, they already started a union of the learning, but Masuda Mamish was Chai El. Remember, in Nimtzul, if he said on Tes Zayin, they were already, getting Masuda, all the Dwarim and Nitrochim to keep the Bochim in a normal day-to-day life. But the Rebbe Rashab called it the Vetchara. The Vetchara means in Yiddish, like the cooked food and the warm meal, the mesh with the dog, and so it's called in Yiddish the Vetchara. So the Vetchara from Tom Chetrim is very special. This is one of the famous tradition that if you ate from the kashi in Tom Chetrim, then you always remain a Tom.
Isn't that a very short period of time from 3 days to start a whole yeshiva from nothing? Isn't that a very short period to make a yeshiva?
The Rebbe planned Tochet 10 years. He talked for 10 years about Tochet. He said that the Iber get taught by 10 years. There had already been a shiatzis about it, the whole thing. Father didn't just saw something power. But the Rebbe was medactic that he wanted it should be in the Sheva Brachas at the Frierdiker Rebbe. It was in the middle of the Sheva Brachas at the Frierdiker Rebbe. But they started the whole